Let's do it, Mr. Chairman.
Playing poker.
We would like to call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for September 17, 2013. Will you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I'd like to introduce the board members starting to my left.
Todd Chernick, Christopher Bloor,
Gary Willis.
Walt Recook.
Jim Hilly.
Nancy Plesnarski.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decisions provided by these four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and substantial justice is done. Sign variance consideration. Relief only to the sign ordinance may be granted where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. This time we need to approve the August meeting minutes. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to approve August meeting minutes.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
I have a quick discussion.
Yes, sir.
Did staff note that my excusal, departure from the meeting in those notes? No.
That,
I know I sent it in the other
right,
night.
you emailed me about that.
It was after the Navy federal case.
But I don't think we heard any more cases. We just,
Yeah, we did one more.
Yeah.
After
We
you
did?
left.
I think we just, basically, was the sign that we
Can we add
asked
that to
them to
the minute?
withdraw.
Okay.
And Todd, your pay will be docked accordingly.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the August 2013 meeting minutes, please raise your right hand. It passed unanimously and one person abstained. Nancy was not here. First case tonight is V13008. Angela, will you please present?
Mr. Chair, actually, I would like to request that this case, the applicant has requested that this case be withdrawn. I have received a letter of withdrawal from him. The shopping center is going to be sold, so they want to wait doing any changes to the signage.
Do we have a motion to withdraw?
to approve the withdrawal?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'll second.
Great motion. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to, yes, sir?
Go ahead.
All in favor of the motion to withdraw, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. It passed unanimously.
It's going to be one of those nights.
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry for all of you in the audience. And for us up here, maybe.
V13009, 14225 Birmingham Highway. Angela, will you please present?
Yes, sir. The site, 14225 Birmingham Highway, is an undeveloped lot consisting of 4.06 acres located in the Northwest Fulton Overlay. It is zoned AG1. A stream bisects the middle of the property. The stream and its buffers make up 83.6% of the site. In his letter of appeal, Adnan Sheikh, hope that's right, proposes to construct a new house, pool, and storage building on the property. His original plan proposed a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot, two-story house, pool, and storage greenhouse structure on the property. As stated in the letter of appeal, the house would have required a 5,577 square foot intrusion into the city's stream buffer, and a 6,732 square foot intrusion into the impervious setback. Both of these disturbances would require a variance. No disturbance is proposed in the state's 25-foot stream buffer. The house would sit approximately 41 feet from Birmingham Highway, which would necessitate a front setback reduction from 60 feet to 40 feet. After the plans were reviewed by the Design Review Board, the applicant and his engineer revised the proposed plans to address the board's comments. A new house plan was chosen. The house would now sit approximately 61 feet from the road, eliminating the need for the front setback reduction. The project now proposes a 5.738 square foot intrusion into the 50-foot stream buffer and a 4,890 square foot intrusion into the impervious setback. To mitigate this disturbance, the applicant proposes the installation of 3 water quality flow well pits and 12,237 square feet of impervious setback area that will be set aside as undisturbed buffer area. The impervious setback has also been extended for another 25 feet. Section 64-416B states that no structure should be built in the minimum front yard. The applicant has revised his site plan to eliminate the encroachment into the front yard, so no variance is required. Section 20-425A2 states that no structures should be constructed in the 75-foot impervious setback. Since the proposed house and storage building encroach into this area, a variance is required. Section 20-425AI1 states that no land disturbance is to be done and no structures are to be built in the 50-foot stream buffer. Since the proposed house and pool will encroach into this area, a variance is required. The design review, courtesy review was held on September 10th, 2013, and we received the following comments. The applicant has complied with or exceeded our suggested comments. For us, when he went in August and came back in September. The applicant has complied with or exceeded our suggested comments. He's changed the house plan to better fit the site. He eliminated the need for the front setback reduction. The engineer performed a dam breach study. The engineer updated the floodplain hydrology study. He created a mitigation plan, including buffer averaging of the 50-foot buffer, and they added a front porch for better relation to the road. Additional department comments: building plan review, site plan review, DOT stormwater had no comments. The arborist states as follows: no specimen trees are evident. Mitigate for any disturbance in the 50-foot buffer and 75-foot impervious setback. The standards for consideration were stated earlier, and the applicant responds as follows. 83% of the site is covered by stream buffers and or impervious setbacks. Due to the implications of the noted buffers, the front yard setback of 60 feet, and the shape of the property, there is no opportunity for development under any design configurations with the land use designation assigned to the subject property. Recommended conditions are as follows. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions, and this is a little different from the original that were sent out. The applicant shall install a chain link fencing along the 25-foot buffer to prevent encroachment prior to the start of the construction, and no additional structures other than the storage building and greenhouse are allowed on the property. This concludes the staff presentation.
Any questions to staff from the board? Yes, sir?
It says in the recommended conditions to install a chain link fence, but yet I know I've been working around buffers and I just required to use tree safe fence. Why are we holding them to a higher standard to put chain link versus just regular tree safe? I know normally my tree safe goes in the impervious setback, not the stream setback, but why are they doing that versus?
Well, we don't have too many instances when we're coming so close to the state buffer, and just to be sure, I mean, we made it very clear that we don't want material stored there. We don't want people walking in there to get to one part or the other. We don't want bulldozers going through there to get to the other part of your site. I mean, we just want to make sure that buffer stays undisturbed.
The second thing, back to that also, under state law, if you do have silt fence, which I'm sure you're going to have
Right.
adjoining that area, that's gonna have to be type C silt fence, which is typically wire back silt fence in addition to silt fence. So it, in some ways, it has a wire back there that's similar to a hog wire fence or whatever. I'm just wondering, was that taken into consideration in the recommendation? I'm just asking.
Yeah. I mean, I know how that works. I know when you're out in the field, things can happen. I don't want
I understand.
building materials getting tossed over there, temporarily or.
So the idea of the chain link fence, Angela, is to prevent more human intrusion than necessarily runoff.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Or-
no, they have to do the silt fence anyway.
Right.
So the silt fence is for the runoff, erosion control, but we just want to make sure that nobody gets in that state buffer, because then that's going to cause problems for the property owner and the city.
And have we indicated how high that chain link needs to be?
I think the standard is 4 or 5 feet, so just.
Do you ever seen anybody build a house in the middle of a stream like this?
Any other questions to staff? Yes, sir?
I kind of try to look for it. What does the transportation plan show for Birmingham Highway? Is that road on a long-range widening proposal? Is it proposed to be widened? I guess I always think of a state route, especially most of the ones I've known over 30 years in our area, they are considered in the future for widening. And I'm just wondering, do you happen to know what it is for Birmingham Highway?
I don't know what the long-range plans are. I know there's no immediate plans. They will have to add
Sure.
like a sidewalk or bike path, depending on where it is on the plan.
Okay,
But I don't know what the long-range plans are.
okay.
Any other questions to staff from the board? This time, we'd like to invite the applicant up to present, and if you would please state your name and address for the board, we'd certainly appreciate it.
My name is Adnan Sheikh. My address is 4231 Brookwood Drive, Austell, Georgia 30106.
Thank you. And if you'd like to present, go ahead.
Oh, well, I guess we're just trying to build a house, me and my wife, in your community so our kids can take advantage of a good school system, I guess. And been with the design board a couple of times, and they have made all the necessary changes in a way. I guess, and I appreciate the board that they diligently told us to come back from the, initial plan that was getting 40 feet just from Birmingham Highway, so we pushed the house, compressed the whole plans just to fit in what they were pleased with, and I think we are too, so I guess that's about it.
Thank you. Any questions to the applicant from the board? Yes, sir.
My first question is regarding the proposed storage and greenhouse. First off, do you have a drawing of that structure?
Yes.
Just, I'm looking for aesthetics.
It's a
Um,
proposed, it's not something that going to go up immediately, but it is something that we would be, if you need, I can submit that.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I'm looking at potential impact to neighbors. Are you planning on any electrical for that structure?
No.
All right, I noticed that in this, staff, maybe you can help me with this one. I noticed there's looking at having pedestrian footbridges over the stream to get access to that
Yes, we would.
structure. Is that going to be allowed from the state
Ye-
buffer or state intrusion standpoint?
Yes, you are allowed to do a perpendicular crossing over the stream to access the other side.
Okay, and would this applicant be permitted to have any electrical serviced into that structure?
I mean, there's no reason for us not to allow it that I can think of.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to ask a lot of the questions so that you don't end up with headaches down the road, okay? The other question I have for you is pertaining to the wall that is noted on the drawing very near the state stream buffer. How is that wall going to be constructed?
Okay, I would like my engineer, Lovick Evans, to come and help me on this one.
Please state your name and address to the board.
Levick Evans, LCE Engineers, 603 Macy Drive, Roswell. At this time, all that detailing for the wall and stuff hadn't been done yet.
Okay.
And it'll be incorporated in with the house plans and have to go through the wall permitting process through the city.
And the reason I'm asking, again, you know, how that wall's going to be constructed is that is very, very close to the state stream buffer, which would make it very difficult as far as access for any type of equipment.
And that would be the reason for Angela's request on the chain link fence for putting it up there. So it would block out, even though with, as Walt said, would have silt fence up and stuff, but this would also fix the limits at which the construction can be taking place.
So you haven't given any consideration whether that's going to be a poured wall or if it's going to be block retaining?
Not at this time. That's all that detailing and it is way down the road.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have for right now.
Any other questions to the applicant from the board?
One, if I may, what, on the back side of your property, sir, and my internet's not working too well, can you tell me what's on the back side of your property?
Back, like after my property ends?
Yes, sir.
There is a subdivision, I guess.
It's Triple Crown.
It's Triple Crown, so you
It's
do back
Triple
up
Crown,
into that.
and then on the other side is the soccer field.
So
North of the property.
as you face, does your property abut the soccer fields?
Yes,
It does. So on the, if you face your property on the
it's.
southeast side
Yes.
would be soccer.
The soccer's on the north,
Soccer's on the,
and Triple Crown is on the
Triple Crown's
east and south.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So the property falls off.
Thank you very much.
You're going downhill.
Last month, we had a property owner that was concerned about this piece of property and what was going to occur on it. Did you meet with that property owner, by the way? I know that there was a gentleman here,
It was.
and I think, Angela, you may have helped him a little bit with some information, but I was just concerned, so,
We didn't get any letters,
no.
so nothing for us to respond to.
Oh, okay.
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 Well, maybe.
You'll get it.
We'll get to you then.
We're
We'll
gonna
get
get
you
you in a sec.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to open the floor for public comment. And if you would come up and state your name and address to the board, we'd certainly appreciate it.
There's a public comment card you need to fill out as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name's Owen Lawson. I'm at 170 Triple Crown Court here in Milton. It is a lot adjacent to the property of the applicant. So a couple things. I had a question for clarification. In the notes here, it says the project now proposes a 5.738 square foot intrusion into the stream buffer. I think that's a typo. I believe that should be 5,738 square feet.
Correct.
That amount is actually greater than the amount prior to the revision. So the original was 5,577. The revised plan has it at 5,738. So that's actually an increase from the revised.
That's because they moved the house back to get it out of the front yard.
Right.
Correct.
Right. The arborist comments, no specimen trees evident. Can someone explain to me? I guess there was another comment about putting in trees to mitigate the disturbance in the non-impervious stream buffer. can anyone tell me, I guess, what would be the plan? Are we talking about adding trees to
Angela,
the buffer?
do you want to take that one?
So I think for hardwood trees, that's anything over 23, 24 inches. I don't know the exact number, but they're pretty large. And the arborist didn't see any of those on the site, and so we don't think he's going to have to recompense for any specimen trees. And I guess part of the mitigation plan will be to, well, typically, if you were going to replant a buffer, you would plant, trees of certain size and caliber. That would be what would be called for in the buffer averaging, where he's pretty much basically setting aside part of the impervious setback as buffer now. But if you've been to the site is pretty wooded. We're not going to make him rip out what's there to plant a buffer. So he will have to, if it's sparsely vegetated in that area, he will have to replant it. But just looking at the aerials and from what the arborist has seen, he hasn't gone all the way back there, but I don't think he's going to have to do a lot of replanting in the buffer area.
But there will be some that will be required.
Where the buffer is sparse, he'll have to replant.
So just to be clear, there will be, obviously trees will be cleared for the construction, but there will or will not be additional trees planted in the buffer area. That's dependent on the density of the foliage, is that correct?
It's depending on what's there in the rest of the buffer, yes.
And is that going to be enforced somehow?
The arborist keeps track of that.
Okay. One other comment I did not understand in here was that there would be a 25-foot extension to the impervious buffer area. What does that entail? Seems to me we are intruding into the buffer area now rather than extending it. Can we explain that?
Right. This is the buffer averaging mitigation. I don't know exactly what the formula is. Mr. Evans can probably explain it better than I can. But he's taking part. I guess there's some calculation about what he's disturbed, and he's giving you more buffer area that was previously impervious setback. And again, if this was bare, he'd have to plant that. But the site that area is pretty heavily wooded, but it will be set aside as undisturbed buffer.
I mean, are we talking about areas to the north and south of the building site? Is that what we're talking about?
If you look on the site plan, this is going to be his new added buffer.
So on the other side?
Yes.
Okay, adjacent to the triple crown. So is that down again to the density of the foliage? It's not dense. Trees will be added. Is that?
Right.
Okay. Thank you all for clarifying those items. So one of my neighbors wanted to be here. He had to travel on business this week, so he was unable to. He did send a very lengthy set of his objections, which I will not read. But I did kind of summarize the major points here as things, some of us in Triple Crown are concerned with.
Could you get that to Angela so she can make copies for us, please?
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
This is the full-blown one.
Let me see if it's mailing it in.
These are my comments. You want to make copies? Bring it back to me.
I just want to have it, so nobody come back.
So before you leave, I just want to make sure what you're summarizing your objections to be. One is I heard that
I've
the
got the
intrusion is
summary I'd
greater
like
than it
to
was
read
before.
to you.
I'm
Say it
sorry?
again?
He has a
I've got
list. I'm going to make
summary I'd like
copies
to
of
read
it so
to
you
you.
can follow
Okay,
along.
Okay.
perfect.
Whereabouts is your house and your neighbor's house in relationship to this site plan? Can you see the plan well enough to see it's like lot
Lot
98?
99, 98, 97.
Let's see.
We have a bigger plan if you'd like to look at it, Mr. Ross.
Yeah.
Well, if that helps you a little bit.
Yeah, my neighbor who submitted those comments is in lot 99, I'm in lot 98.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
I guess one other thing I'd like to provide copies of was the price per acreage on that lot versus comparable sales in the area. It's about 50% less was the asking price. I don't know what the sale price was, but the asking price for it was about 50% less. You know, to my thinking, approval of the variances here sets a bad precedent that developers can come in and buy land at a discounted rate because of the zoning laws, and then, you know, come in and hire an engineer and get almost guaranteed approval. It seems to be contrary to the spirit of the you know, zoning ordinances to begin with. But
So you implying that we can be bought? Is that what you're
no,
saying?
not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm just
All right.
saying, it just seems to set a bad precedent. The
So
reason that the property is selling for the value that it's selling at is because people knew or thought it would be difficult to build on. That's what myself and my neighbor were told. We talked to neighbors, we talked to realtors. My neighbor actually spoke to someone, a city employee, which when she returns my notes, I'll have that a little better. But that with the, you know, with the zoning restrictions on that property, it would be difficult to build on it. And particularly building an, you know, expansive property. The neighbors in Triple Crown, we have about 2,500, I think, square foot footprint. That type of structure, that type of building seems more well suited to this property and would go less into the buffers. There's also, you know, potential to place the structure on the northern side of the property where the stream is further from Birmingham Highway to again reduce the intrusion into the buffers.
So if I may ask,
Yeah.
is your ultimate concern the intrusion into the buffers or the size of the structure that's being proposed?
You know, it's the
Well, might be.
aesthetics, it's the if to put it in the terms of the board's documentation on the website, the damage to the public
No,
good, it's the
that's
aesthetics
one
of the
thing.
area.
Okay.
It's why do we have
That's
the
one set, yeah.
buffers defined greater than the state? And a lot of us came to Milton because we appreciated the city's, you know, drive
Better
to
now?
maintain natural
Yeah,
beauty
sure.
and
Do you
to
have one more
keep
set?
development, you know, in check relatively. My neighbor came from Gwinnett County, and he,
That's a different set.
you know,
Sure.
he had a lot of bad things to say about the board there that,
So how do?
you know, to his thinking, way over approved variances. Now, I'm not saying
Okay.
that you guys are doing that by any means, but, you know, that was a concern and it's certainly an emotional response from him, coming from Gwinnett.
This is the gentleman that's speaking right now.
So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Are you against the building of this house because it goes into the setbacks, or are you against the size of this house?
To me, I mean, do I personally have a stake in the particular setbacks? No, but I assume that they're made for a reason. And yes, there are mitigation strategies, but there's also the fact that we're putting in a 10,000 square foot, you know, build out, essentially entirely in the buffer area. You know, as far as the neighborhood and the aesthetics and maintaining the natural beauty of the area, I don't know if the house and the property, the way the developer will be doing that or not. If they clear cut a substantial portion of the trees, we can increase road noise to, the homes in Triple Crown.
So you would be okay if it was a 2,000 square foot house, maybe 2 stories?
That would seem, less intrusive,
Okay.
yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What size acreage is your lot?
It's 1 acre.
1 acre. And do you know the size of this lot?
Yes, it's 4 acres.
And so if it was in white columns, how many houses would be allowed on this lot?
In,
I mean, Triple Crown.
Triple crown, white columns, triple crown, whatever. So that would be 4 houses potentially. Because
If there was no string.
if there's no string.
Yeah.
So,
if there's no
so I just want to make sure I put this all in perspective. So if you had, let's say 2 acres, you would have 2 houses. You've got a property here where somebody just wants to build a house. And yes, the house may be larger square footage wise than your 2,500 square feet, but not if it was 2 houses. But I'm just trying to make sure I understand. I want to be fair because that's all we're about, is trying to be fair. And at the same time, we know we've got a variance here, and we're going to hear out the case. But I'm just trying to make sure I'm logical like you are, trying to say, okay, why am I concerned, and how can I make sure I take care of your concerns as well as the applicant's concerns to make the community as good as possible. So when I look at something like this, I kind of think, well, from the standpoint of overall development, I'm going from 2 houses to 1 house. And the other problem, like you mentioned, whenever you have a house, it's not just a house. It's the septic tank, it's the field lines, it's the additional clearing, it's the driveways, it's all those other things that are composite in addition to that home. So, so when you look at overall clearing, even though you may have been built on an acre, your builder may have cleared, 3/4 of it to get the house, the driveway, the septic field, and all that. And again, when I look at this site plan, they're not doing that much clearing, although I agree they're going back in the buffer, and they're gonna have to do a lot of planting and all of that, which I have to say, I'm on the development side where I've done development. The city's pretty tough as far as what they require, as far as recompense and planting buffers and replanting. And they have a very good track record compared to other metro areas within both the region as well as the state. In fact, they got one of the highest ratings out of any government for how well they do erosion control in the state from the Soil Water Conservation Commission. So they're doing a very tough, they're being very tough on developers. They're bringing them to court. Same thing with the arborist. So I think in overall, they're doing it. I don't think they get played up in the newspapers, perhaps, what they've done. But I know from the back side what I'm hearing and seeing. But I think that's 2 of the things I'm hearing from you. And lastly is the buffer. Again, they're giving you more buffer in the back, so there's never going to be anybody back there between you and the creek. And that's what you have now. And, could they go across? Yeah, they could have gone across and moved the house completely back and asked for a rear yard setback and put a driveway on the other side of the creek and done all these other things. And they're not asking for that. They're asking to go towards the front side, which I think, if it was me, I'd be saying thank you. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And I'm not, it's not gonna be the end of the world for us if the property is built. But I did want to, voice that we do have concerns about it. This is not a build out that is without any objections from anyone in the community.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I'd like to make a comment if you don't mind.
If you would come up and state your name and address and fill out a yellow card, we'd certainly appreciate it.
My name's Kelly Crocker. I work for First Covenant Bank. We're actually the owner of this property. And I live at 122 Williamson Street in Jefferson, Georgia, Banks and Commerce. I just thought I would comment about the values certainly his concerns about the values. As a part and parcel to our responsibility to our bank, we have property appraised by qualified appraisers, and this one's no different. And we had it appraised, and we set a price based upon that appraisal. It is a good and fair appraisal. We review our appraisals. Certainly this property is encumbered with this creek running through it. That does affect the value, and thus it affects the buyers also. You know, they may be getting a deal on the land as opposed to other unencumbered land, but they're paying for it in another way by changing house plans, asking for variances. We had several buyers interested in this property that did not want to go through all of this, pay engineers, pay for plans, and all that this gentleman has done. I think he's going to be a fine citizen. He's been certainly very persistent, respectful, and trying to accommodate the city. So, I mean, just as far as the land value goes, it's been determined by a licensed appraiser what it's worth, and we've sold it for that. So, but just wanted to make a point that its value's not determined by maybe what we put it on the market for. It was determined by a licensed appraiser who had nothing invested in other than assessing its value. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? If you'd come back up to the microphone, please.
I don't know if you guys wanted to see or include this comparable pricing report relative to what she's talking about.
Can you summarize it?
Yeah, the average price per square foot on comparable properties I looked at over last year is about $64,000 per acre. This price, the listing price was $33,000 per acre. It's about half. I don't know what the actual sale price was.
Okay. Thanks.
Any questions to the staff or the applicant from the board?
A question for staff. Any guess as to percentage of houses that are built on streams in Milton? 1%, 5%, 10%? I mean, it's pretty rare, right? I mean, that Milton has allowed this. I mean, are we aware of any?
I think we've only seen one other variant similar to this. We tend to get more pools.
Pools.
I think those are most of our
Man-made
variance
pools?
requests.
Not ponds, but man-made
Pools,
pools.
swimming
Yeah.
pools, yes.
Yeah.
Especially in places like Crooked Creek where the buffers have changed since the houses were built.
Mm.
But I think we only had one other change for from the ground house on a lot like this.
Any other questions to staff? Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Angela, the storage structure that's proposed on the plan, what are what's the code say if we were to suggest that be moved more to the side yard? Would that be allowed? I know it can't be in the front yard. Is there anything that would prevent him from being more to the side / front?
Well, he's right on the edge of his 25-foot side setback and the 50-foot rear setback, so I think that's why I put it there. If he went further, where's my arrows? If he went further towards the road, he'd be in the stream buffer. If he went further to the right, he'd be in the setback, side setback.
So does that storage facility require any type of variance? I mean, is that part of this, or?
This is part of the third part of the variance, yes, or fourth.
So based on the plan and where we see the buffers, that's the only place he can put that.
I mean, wherever he puts it, he's either going to be in the setback or the stream buffer or impervious setback.
So if he went to the northwest corner of the property
He's in the,
Would that be in the front?
that would be the front setback.
That's why it's gonna do that.
And then we'd also have the problem with accessory structures going in front of the house,
No, I
which
understand
isn't
that.
allowed also, so.
I was looking at the plane of the house.
I mean, yeah, it would have to be,
The southwest corner of the house would be right at the 60-foot build line. I mean, because the road kind of curves.
yeah, there's a little area there he could fit it in.
And do you have the dimensions of what that proposed structure might be?
Not without a scale.
Well, it looks like this is to scale, but I don't have a ruler.
So let's see. 50.
It looks big.
That, I was gonna
It's
say.
25.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
this
big.
is 20, yeah, it's 25.
25 by probably 40.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
That's
yeah.
huge. Okay.
Any other questions to staff?
Mr. Chair, if I can, before we close everything down, I'd like to ask the applicant more about that
I
structure.
was just gonna say, you all can come forward and either present a rebuttal or a closing statement. So, go ahead now.
So I started with that storage structure, and I'm gonna end with it as well. What is the dimension that you're looking for a variance request on that structure? Accessory structure?
30 by 40.
That's huge. What would be your
Well,
intention?
actually, my wife wanted to put a greenhouse, so she wanted to build some, grow some plants, and, that's about it, so, and we had 4 acres of land, so I said, okay, we will put a greenhouse back there, so you can go do your gardening. And we had some other plans, but as time went by, we took a bunch of stuff out of the plans, and we just had this one little building in the back. And we measured our existing living room, it was 30 by 40, so okay, yeah, this is big enough for your greenhouse, so we just decided on that. So if you have any recommendations.
Well, I have a number of concerns, and so I'm trying to figure out how to mitigate those concerns. One is, a 30 by 40 structure is gonna be very near the rear corner of your property, which probably won't be too visible to you, but will be visible to your neighbors in Triple Crown. So that's a concern. It's a concern that it's in the setback, in the sense that it's within the buffers. The other concern is you're just asking for a 30 by 40 footprint with no aesthetic idea of what the structure might be, which creates other aesthetic concerns. And it seems to be the least accessible part on your property to actually get any use out of. So I'm curious as to the need for that.
One of the items here addressing what's going on with that, because you're asking for, you want to see what it's going to look like. Basically, well, this is at the very beginning of the process, not the end. So as when he submits in the house plans, at that time he'll have this stuff all detailed out and everything else. Then they could submit it. I mean, that's the only other way. Bill may be smaller when it comes into it. They may have some pathways around it, stuff like that. But if we don't ask for a footprint now, then we have to come all the way back through this process again. And so all the concerns about there, we pushed it as far away from everybody up there, the soccer fields and everything else. There's one house back there, but it's at 50 feet away from the property line, just like everybody else's house in Triple Crown. I mean, they got accessory structures all over the place in there too. So, so knowing I know what your concerns are, but I think those concerns can't be addressed at this point. They have to be addressed a little bit later when knows a little bit more about what's going on, because that's just it. It's got to come in with it's going to be dovetailed in with house facades and everything else, and put it back there, to address it up that way. So that's as good as we can get it this time.
Is the, I was gonna say, Is this house being built in a floodplain?
No, sir, it's not.
How-
And the reason I can tell you that is I did all of the hydraulic work for Triple Crown. And I ran a floodplain study when we did the Triple Crown subdivision. And the flows out of the little lake up there and everything else is how we determined the floodplain that I just basically replicated from those old construction plans in New York.
Yeah, but we know kind of what Mother Nature's like. I mean, the Corps of Engineers, I'm a degree engineer too, so the Corps of Engineers in New Orleans thought they had it all figured out, and then Katrina comes along, right? So, I mean, 100-year floodplains are just...
1% probability.
Yes. I mean, so,
But
yeah.
as of where we're going on right now, it's not in a floodplain.
Right, I understand. I just think there's a risk to the homeowner here.
Well, even on this, when submitting plans, city's got a requirement that the finished floor, which is gonna be the basement level, has to be 3 feet higher than that anyway. And in this particular place, it's gonna be like 6, 7 feet higher than that, just because of the creek falls down and comes up on the sides.
Is there a dam? Is there an upstream dam? So is there a dam in this? Is there dammed water in this area?
There is in the Triple Crown. Just
So was that taken into account?
That is taken into account. I had to do a dam break on that dam, and the house and the preliminary finished floors I
Right.
put in there were
Yeah.
from the breach study.
Well, I don't want you to misunderstand. I mean, I certainly am a great believer in great engineering, right? But it's just fundamentally tough for me to swallow building a house like this over a stream. So I don't know. Maybe somebody can convince me otherwise.
Sir, do you own this property already, or is your contract contingent upon our approval?
Yes, contract contingent.
It's contingent?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
And then just a last clarifying question from my behalf. The footprint of the structure that you're looking to build is what size in square foot? The footprint?
The home itself, house itself?
It's about 4,500, 5,000.
What are you thinking?
Plus a basement, plus a second story?
Plus, yes, sir.
What was the square footage?
5,000 footprint.
Footprint, right.
Do you have any intent in the future to subdivide this property?
No,
And so it's just going to be one single-family home?
yes.
I noticed that on this plan, it looks like there's 2 existing structures that were on this property presently. Is that correct?
They were, they are not there anymore.
Okay, because I see it shown on the survey.
Yeah, it
The
shows,
two-
but yes, there's nothing
It's
but
been around for a
vegetation.
number of years.
Okay. And the footprint that you're describing in your quantity, 5,000, that's including the garage, is that correct?
Yes, and then there will,
Okay.
it's going to be a big
It's gonna have a
patio.
portiche and
Yeah, there's not, I mean, living quarters is not gonna be 5,000, it's not gonna be 5,000 square foot all living, it's a lot of that's gonna be just open area, just sky on the top. And so is the top level is gonna be, the total living square footage, I don't think would exceed 5,000, total, the house. I don't think it should be exceeding 5,000. Probably 5,200 at the most, but nothing more than that,
That's comparable to what's at Triple Crown?
yes. We can afford to build a house too.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Any questions for staff? At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing, and the floor is open for a motion. Yes, sir.
I'm going to make a motion for approval of V13-009. This is to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 40 foot, to allow house and courtyard to encroach in the 75 impervious setback and the 50-foot stream buffer. And lastly, to allow a pool to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and the 50-foot stream buffer. And I'm going to hold that condition to the site plan provided by LCE Engineers dated 8/9/2013 for variance plat for 14-225 Birmingham Highway. Mr. Adnan Shadiq, and with also staff's recommendation that applicant shall install a chain link fence along a 25-foot stream buffer to prevent encroachment prior to start of construction in proposed disturbed areas. In other words, I don't want it everywhere, it's wherever the area is going to be disturbed, and make sure that that's only in those areas. Secondly, no additional structures other than the storage building / greenhouse are allowed on the property. That holds you so that it's only going to be one house on that property.
Do we have a second?
Sure.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
The reason I'm making this, and again, it goes back to our general reasoning for issuing variances to begin with, it's basically the relief is being granted because the unordinary condition or exceptional situations of this particular property. You have a piece of property that is fairly well divided by a stream. It basically has a 25-foot stream buffer on each side of the stream, as well as an additional 50-foot. So basically, you have 150 foot of the property, and as the applicant said, almost the majority of the property is taken up by buffers. In addition, the staff, as well as I know for myself, I'm concerned that someday that Birmingham Highway may someday need to be widened. Presently, it looks like that road only has about a 50 to 60 foot right-of-way in front of it. If that road ever gets widened to a 4-lane road, you're going to wind up having to take that house, if the house was required to be built forward, and get it out of the stream buffer. And I don't think that, you as taxpayers, we would have to buy that house if that house is pushed forward. And again, I'm thinking long-term, that's why they're considering letting them move back. Lastly, I think, again, the relief, if granted, is not detrimental to the public good. Had this property didn't have all these issues, you might have had 3 or 4 houses on this property. You now only have 1. So far as having a density situation, you've got one person who's going to meticulously go in there and try to basically improve water quality and minimize impact. Instead of having 4 septic fields, you're going to have 1 septic field that could possibly endanger this creek and stream and the water in the area. You also have 1, 2, 3 water quality areas being created to minimize impact to the stream, as well as a buffer plan that the applicant's going to have to plant, in addition to the general trees that they do. So I think in essence, you've got a fairly tough piece of property, and trying to make something a little bit better out of it. You also adjoin a soccer complex, which isn't exactly, sometimes we consider the best neighbors because of a lot of activity, but you've got a homeowner and his family that thinks it's an ideal location, which I applaud. So again, I think all these things you have makes it a win-win for the community and hopefully with the homeowner. I realize there's going to be impact to a stream, but there's impacts all over town with the stream, but they're doing their best to control water quality by using these water quality products. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's that flow well pit that's going to be sized and placed around here. So as far as impact to the streams, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have stream buffers, period. And now we have stream buffers, which is fine. I agree with it. I think it's a wonderful concept. In fact, I put some in my developments before it was even required by law. But again, it's something where when you have a tough piece of property and you don't have a lot of options, this is a case where you would encroach on. State law even allows you to encroach in the stream buffer. And I was on the City of Atlanta Stream Buffer Variance Committee and saw many variances like this. And when properties have tough situations, you have to allow the developers and engineers and builders get creative. We don't have that many as Angela told us. We have a couple that are for pools, but this is a case where it's going to be very hard to put a home on this site, in particular with a fairly major highway out front. And if I was on that, I would want to push my house back as far as possible as well. So that's my reasoning for making that recommendation.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I wanted to clarify something on the motion. They no longer need the setback variance. I think
I
you
was
would
gonna ask about
include
that.
So,
So
I mean,
maybe-
because if you keep that in your motion, you're giving it to them.
I
so.
Right. You wanted to keep that?
No,
That was your intent?
no.
So
I
you
was
might
going to
wanna-
ask about that.
Okay.
So that was one of my concerns is
Okay.
they didn't.
Well,
they
I have
didn't
no
ask for it.
problem amending,
Please do.
Well, let's,
Okay.
before we amend, let's talk through this.
Yeah, yeah, I had-
Because I think there are a lot of things to discuss.
Yeah, so, if you don't mind, Chris.
No, please.
So what is the dimensions of the stream as far as its width and depth? And when I say depth, so there's typically approximate depth of the water, and then there's, the entire cavity, that's probably not the right engineering term, but the entire cavity that the stream sits in.
And
It's
Angela,
5 foot wide?
and the question that I'd like to know that you can just add to that, is there water in it all the time, or is there only water in it when it rains?
I think there is water in this stream all the time. Mr. Lubbock may be able to clarify that, because I haven't been back there, because it's just, I can't get back there.
We play soccer, like when my kids play soccer, and that stream that flows through there, I can't tell you all the time, but I'll tell you majority, i.e. 80% of the time, there's water.
I mean, it's wet. It may
Yeah,
not be
there's
flowing,
some wet.
but it's wet.
Is it 2 feet deep? No, but there's water.
but it's
So
an
you got-
overflow from the lake. And if the lake is hitting its drain point, then the water's going to flow through that drain down this creek. I mean, that's where the water's coming from, is from the lake.
So how big a cavity currently exists there? Do we have any feel for that? I mean, is it like,
Not on the property.
it's like
I can tell you-
15 feet wide and
tell you
10
the
feet
soccer
deep,
field,
or?
I can't tell you the property.
Yeah,
It-
because that'll
it's-
be an indication of
scales
what
off
kind of
about
flooding
5
they've
foot.
had. Yeah.
It's about 5
feet,
foot.
yeah.
What's that?
I'm thinking 5 feet.
5 feet's is the width of the stream and the width of the cavity that it's
It's
in?
the channel width.
The channel.
5 feet's pretty deep.
Yeah, but I think it gets deeper as it gets onto the soccer property, because it gets close to the floodplain for that adjoining stream. I think that's Chicken Creek that it flows into,
I think it is, I think you're correct.
so,
Yeah, Chicken Creek is absolutely 5-10 feet deep.
yeah, it's pretty deep. But this one isn't quite as big a basin, but you kind of look here.
Do you build houses on creeks?
I have. Yeah, I
How they,
have.
how they do 30 years later?
Well, ask Frank Lloyd Wright, Falling Waters, they built it right over a stream. But no, honestly, this is not on top of a stream, this is still 25 feet away. It's not like it's on top.
Yeah,
And the
right.
25 foot, by the way, isn't really 25 feet. The actual measurement for a stream buffer is measured from the rested vegetation of the stream. So what that means is,
Okay.
when you have a creek and it looks like this, it's the highest wetted perimeter where there could be vegetation loss, and Angela, you could stop me or correct me. But that's actually where it's measured, not the center of the creek, but it's the actual edge of the creek and really kind of the channel of the creek, the outside boundaries of the channel. So
There's the
it's
25-foot
actually,
buffer, yeah. There it
it's
is,
actually, could be a little bit further if you measure from the
Right.
center line.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I built I built tennis courts near creeks and streams, I built buildings, but again, it's just a matter of, I can take you to the city of Atlanta, I approved a number of houses built next to Peachtree Creek.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have concerns with the recommendation and motion to allow for a 1,200 square foot block for an accessory structure. I would rather see this applicant come forward with, as most other accessory structure variances come forward with, an actual drawing of what the structure is going to be. That's a 1,200 square foot
something.
do what you want kind of deal. And in thinking where that's being proposed to be located, from a neighbor impact standpoint, that's a large structure.
But most cases, we don't see architecture on residential. We don't.
I'm just listening to what I heard from the
I
public.
understand, I understand. But
So-
typically, we don't get.
So let me put things in a little bit of context here from my perspective. So we had this huge conversation a month ago about size of signs. I mean, we're going on and on for like 30 minutes about the size of signs. Really, guys, this is a house that's within a stream buffer.
Right?
Right.
This is a very, very different situation, right?
No argument.
So we're fussing and, size of the sign is 25% more than what, like, give me a break.
Get your point.
This is serious. This is a little more serious. I'm not saying I'm going to vote one way or the other, but holy smoke, guys.
Well, let me say this. I mean, I'll throw a little hat on. I'm a certified floodplain manager. As a certified floodplain manager, you can build structures near creeks, streams. You see them on coastal areas where houses get built, but they have to be built to a certain standard. Now, if it in fact is in the floodplain, and if they are trying to obtain something that's in the floodplain, there's a whole layer of additional structural regulations that someone would have to get past before they could build it. Now, I'm not even sure the city would allow it. But this is not what I see as being the case. What I'm seeing on this plan does not show the structure. And Angela, stop me if I'm wrong. Is this within the 100-year floodplain?
I don't believe so. I mean,
No,
Mr.
it's
Evans
not.
did
It's
do a
not.
flood
It's
study,
not.
and I
It's
think it's
not.
clear
Okay,
that.
so again, and I do know there are storms greater than 100-year. That means really a 1% chance of a storm of that magnitude occurring in any single year. It's not really 100 years.
That's
You could have
based,
5 of
and
them.
that's based on 50 years of data, by the way.
And you could
how long has
also,
this-
and you could
how long
also
has this
have.
plant- How long has this planet been around?
And I agree, you're gonna have a 500-year storm, and you're gonna have a 1,000-year storm, and you're gonna have all these
Sorry,
different
Gary.
storms.
Let's see, look at you.
No, but again, you're gonna have all these different layers, and it's up to them what they wanna do. I mean,
Maybe that's the solution.
it's what they feel
Okay.
comfortable with, how far up they're away from the
He's a
ground.
Georgia Tech educated guy, so I have to give him some
Well,
level of respect.
And I, honestly, I mean, I'm the one who actually permitted buildings in the floodplain that had to be rebuilt, and,
So let's just move on. Todd brings up a good point, that there's a wall that's on these drawings that looks all of 2 inches, no, literally, from that buffer,
From the 25-foot
From-
state buffer.
from the 25-foot state buffer. Todd just brought up a good point, saying to keep stuff out of the water may be nearly impossible. I mean, it's just gonna happen. Not through negligence, but just through just humans. I know he was requested to move the property back, but why not say, you know what, you can't be that close. You gotta put it back up towards the street.
but Chris, this is a 50 scale drawing. That area that looks like it's an inch or a fraction or whatever could really represent 5 or 10 feet.
And my point would still be the same.
All I
My
would say
point-
is.
I'm not asking a question.
Sure.
It's not a question, it's a statement.
Okay.
What's the downside to that? And I'm just-
Moving the house up 10 feet.
Yeah, and I think it relieves a lot of our concerns that we have sitting here tonight. That, because, Jim, you're right, we talked a lot about signs last month, and now we're talking about something that's much more significant.
Structural,
Yeah,
the house
so
structure.
if it comes up to the front of the road, and the owner's okay with that, that's okay. If he's not okay, make it smaller, make the structure smaller. If Birmingham Road gets widened, I can't predict the future, I'm not the state, not my business, not my call. With all due respect to the property owner, if the owner, the bank in this instance, wants to sell it for free, I don't care. Let's just try to say, hey, push it up further, homeowner wants to take the risk, that the road may be widened, his risk.
And we've already made a motion to reduce this,
Yeah.
so we don't, so
move it forward, we can get back out of that particular buffer, cause us, I think, all a little bit more comfort in that particular area. I don't think we would alleviate all the concerns that have been articulated tonight, but it seems to be a middle ground in that
Here's,
instance.
here's my opinion, as the chair, I don't try to say too much, I try to just listen. But I think the two things that I'd like to see done is I'd like to see it moved forward to the front.
Yep.
And I'd like to not vote on the storage greenhouse until they come forward with something that's a little more than just, we're gonna slap up a structure. I'd actually like to see what it is, how big it is, where it's gonna be. Because I do think that the property owners that live in Triple Crown have the right to know exactly what's gonna be built before it's actually built. So those are my two concerns.
I do have the original site plan that he proposed, if you all want to see that.
That'd
I
be
would
terrific.
love to see
Wonderful.
that.
I'd love to see that.
That'd be great.
But again, just note the amount of intrusion into the
Angela,
and the setback.
why'd we move it back in the first place? Was this to the DBR?
DRB.
That was one of the DRB's comments.
Okay.
'Cause this, this is a major road,
There you
and
go.
traditionally the houses were closer to the street, but they were also smaller. So,
Well, just give us one down here and you three look at that one. Us three will look at this. Move it out and get rid of this.
Yep.
See?
That's the original.
Well, that's 40 feet, this is at 40 feet.
Oh, there is the pool.
There you go.
That's amazing.
But that's fine.
I can't.
Get rid of this until they come back and show us and move that out.
So this is their
That's what I'd like to see
where
done.
they have a lot of
All right,
outside.
we have a motion to approve V13009 to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 40 feet, to allow a house and courtyard to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback in the 50-foot city stream buffer, to allow a pool to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback in the 50-foot city stream buffer, located by LCE Engineers, dated 8/9/2013, and the plat is 14225 Birmingham Highway, with the following recommended conditions. Applicant shall install a chain link fencing along the 25-foot buffer to prevent encroachment prior to the start of construction in disturbed areas. And number two, no additional structures other than the storage building greenhouse are allowed on the property. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Mr. Chair, before we take a vote,
Yes.
if we can introduce two amendments, we could take that same motion.
I'm okay with that.
We have to vote on the amendments first.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. I have no problem. I'll withdraw my recommendation. I would like to make a consideration to eliminate the reduction of the front yard setback from 60 foot to 40 foot. Is that what you wanted?
No,
No.
we want that in there, because we
Okay.
want to move it forward.
Right.
Okay, well then, okay,
What?
never mind. Go on. Withdraw.
Well, you can still withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw my motion.
No, you don't have to withdraw your
I'm
motion. 'Cause I
withdrawing
think
my
we can
motion.
We'll vote on the motion eventually, but I think rather than going through the whole process again, we can perhaps hear two amendments. And
Okay.
then a
Keep
motion.
laughing at this. It's like, is this possible?
This is part of.
For us to make an amendment mid-motion?
Yeah, absolutely, it's appropriate to make an amendment. However, if the motion withdrawn, then you just start with a new motion.
think that'd be
Either way.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's why I was saying,
Yes, you can.
No, I don't have any of the stuff. I'm not doing
Well,
it.
I got it all.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Let's vote then.
I would like to just withdraw my motion. That way let someone else propose something
Okay.
else.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in
Okay.
favor of withdrawal of the motion, raise your right hand.
All right.
Opposed, same side.
Let's
It's
try this
passed.
again.
Okay, we need a new motion.
You can make your first motion.
I'm not
In
gonna do it.
5 years.
I'm not gonna do it. You do it. I don't think the chair ought to do it.
Be specific on the
Yeah.
front setback, because he could still have that and encroach.
How, he's still gonna do it regard, there's
I'm
something,
saying-
but what we're suggesting is mitigating that encroachment.
Right, which we have to be specific in saying that this drawing, moving the structure forward 10 feet. Or
Right.
20 feet, whatever you want to say. but we can't just say,
Just say it.
give relief to the
Do it.
front, because you could still go into the back.
Mr. Cherney, please make a motion.
So I wanted to remind you that you can make motion, you can break the request down. You can vote on each one, piece by piece.
It seems to me, and just out of, just talking about this, if you make reference to this last plan, this 7/9/2013,
Right.
does that not accomplish what you want?
I think it does, but what we're trying to do, sir, is kind of meet in the middle. So to give the homeowner some flexibility that if he wants to be that far up front, great, but if he wants to kind of be between that point and the current plan, allow him some flexibility in there.
Okay.
That was my thinking. I don't know what anybody else was thinking, but that was.
That's
Right, but the whole intent would be to get him further out of the setbacks.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, so I
Maybe
think,
not all the way up to the
And we've
40
got
foot.
20 feet in here to play with.
okay.
Right.
Well, I think, again, what I would do is, again, say if you wanted to reduce the front yard setback by whatever number of feet, and I think that's what the chairman was saying, and then on the rear, you want to say something that within the city's 50-foot setback, you allow them to encroach in that 50-foot setback X number of feet.
I think we have, yeah. I think
Yeah, because if
we
you
need to
notice,
do that.
the revised version has more of an encroachment than the old one.
Correct.
Right.
But in the old one, there was encroachment there already.
Right.
Right.
Well, I don't know what you mean by already.
And then,
But I apologize. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to.
I mean, there is still encroachment proposed.
and then lastly, you may want to talk about the encroachment into the city's 50-foot stream buffer in reference to the greenhouse, that you may say that I would like that to be tabled, come back,
Yeah.
whatever.
Make another motion. Do it right.
And and one more other thing, I don't think that first plan is showing buffer averaging, so you may need to make that if you reference that first plan, you may have to add the buffer averaging as a
Yeah,
condition.
let's, yeah, absolutely. Let's just talk through this for a moment. And
Well, I agree.
Yeah,
let's just talk through it, figure out everything that we're talking about.
And we'll write it.
And then we'll write it up, and we can vote if people are uncomfortable with it and continue to discuss. Fair?
Sure.
So and I closed the.
There it is.
So what we're gonna do is reduce the front setback from 60, we're gonna say to 50, is that the,
Yeah.
I think 60 to 50 is perfect.
yep,
So change that to a 50.
yep.
Okay.
To allow us to be, 70-foot first setback. And I think here's the second point, we wanna change that, what we're talking about right now, not into that stream buffer. We want to reduce their capability of building into that, correct?
How do you word that?
Limit the amount of intrusion into the 50-foot city stream buffer.
Limit.
Well, again, the question is how much?
Yeah, that's right, that's
where I
right.
just, we'll pick the number, but I think that's the wording.
Right.
Limit.
Well, I think, again, if you're moving it forward 10 feet,
That should have a corresponding.
Yeah, what was the
Impact
intrusion
on
before?
that, yeah.
How many
Correct.
feet?
Yeah.
So, Counselor, you had something?
I was just say, if you can allow an intrusion of a certain number of feet into
Correct.
Right.
that buffer.
but here's your problem, and this is why I like using site plans. That way you don't say that you can do anything you want in that whole area for the whole length of the property. If you say it's based on a site plan, then the maximum amount is defined by,
Yeah,
you're right.
and
You're
here,
absolutely right.
and here.
so that's
I understand
kind of
your
why.
point. I understand your point, but here's where I disagree.
Uh-huh.
We're making modifications to a plan that he submitted to us. Granted, it's not a final plan, there's still more work to be done, I understand that.
Sure.
But I want to give them the flexibility to say, hey, because I'm a free market kind of guy, whatever you want to do there, obviously within the rules that we're
Sure.
going to lay out tonight and that are already on the book, go for it. I don't want to build such a box saying, you got to stick here, do all this.
But
Well,
at the
could
same
we say
time,
this-
you're
could we-
granting ability for them to put the pool, put the garden, encroach further downstream to build more things. So,
Could we accomplish what we're both
well,
trying to say by saying this existing plan with the requirement that they shift the structure 10 feet to the west? Can we do that? Take this plan with the requirement they shift
To
the
the
structure
west.
10 feet to the west towards Birmingham Highway.
Well, but you have to make reference to the setbacks that you're
So you're going to
asking.
allow them the same
Would we
amount of
have to?
disturbance?
Council?
If we acknowledge
less
that this is a to-scale drawing, which I think I understood that to be.
It is.
Be careful when you say to the west. It may be that you mean perpendicular to Birmingham Highway.
Yes.
That's a safe.
I think that will give you the location of the
Okay.
footprint
Yeah.
that is on there.
But so.
Well, I mean,
Angela,
if you say, if you're still going to reference the site plan, I'm assuming you're still going to allow them everything that's shaded.
No, no.
Okay,
You're saying
well, yeah,
taking
so you'll
that, taking
just-
this plan, allowing, providing that the house is shifted 10 feet towards Birmingham Highway, perpendicular to,
Okay.
then that would mean less intrusion.
Right, you just, I mean, I would suggest the square footage amount, I mean, but
See,
the
that's
question
the
is how
purpose
you
of the
pick,
shaded
pick that.
plan, the
Understood.
site plan.
Yeah.
Or do we defer and have them bring
evaluate
back
square footage.
a drawing which reflects our intention?
I mean, I would suggest if you were gonna make them move it forward, I would suggest like a maximum square footage intrusion, but I couldn't tell you how to pick that
What the
number.
number is, right.
Yeah, you don't want to limit them, you know, if they're going to have to move things around.
I mean, I'm assuming you want it to go down, but I couldn't tell you what would work.
I know he does. Now, you close it. Because this.
All right, two engineers figured out how to word this.
That's why we're engineers, we don't deal with language.
I'm a nuclear engineer. I'm civil
Well, if this thing blows up, we'll call you.
I don't see any plutonium, so it's just the rest of it I don't like.
I mean, maybe Lovick has an idea of, you know, the minimum intrusion he can get away with if it's moved forward, but you may want to ask the
I'm
applicant.
not comfortable quoting square footage.
Yeah, I'm not either.
No, not.
Well, basically, as was stated in both cases, it was 5,577 in the old plan.
Right.
This plan shows 5,738. So you're not dealing with a big difference in either one of the intrusions into the stream buffer. And that's with moving the house forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the intrusion in the impervious setback, there is a big
There's
change.
a huge, that's where the is
Correct.
the significant.
That one on the old plan was 5,577. This plan is 44,890.
It was 6732 to 4890, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. And no, and then the next one is proposed buffer averaging. Is at 12,000.
Yeah, if we get into this,
We're,
we're not
we're,
in a position to.
I'm
we're
not
just,
gonna
we're
do
not,
it.
I'm not gonna vote on that.
We
I'm
gotta
not-
learn a different, we gotta figure out a different way to word this, to where everybody understands it without getting into square footage.
And that's why you almost have to reference a plan. I'm sorry.
But
to
if you
say.
reference this plan,
Good point.
if you reference this plan requiring the structure moves 10 feet, and the
Perpendicular to
square footage
Birmingham
is
Highway.
reduced, you know,
Hey, why wouldn't that?
commensurately, why wouldn't that address
That
the
would
issue?
work.
Well, that does, I mean, if you reference the plan, you still are giving them, I would think you're still giving them all that shaded area.
Right.
Can we ask the,
Well, then we're gonna need a new plan.
Then we're deferring until next month.
Well, what I'm saying is I think if they were agreeing to this original plan that they submitted, this is moving it up and out of the majority of the 50-foot city stream buffer, then why should that make us happy? I mean, that's the thing and I'm talking about this new, old
Right, no, I
plan.
understand what you're
Why
saying.
can't we just go with this plan
That's what I'm saying.
and take the storage thing off?
Right,
Why not just go with the plan? It's already dated.
right.
They've already approved it, because that was their first one they were gonna do,
With the original conditions.
with the original conditions, and just remove the storage shed. for
The square foot, but the square foot, or so there's 0 for the
Well,
state.
only
The
thing
square
is-
foot has gotta be wrong in this plan.
The thing is, if you remove the storage and the greenhouse, it actually reduces the proposed intrusion in the impervious setback.
By
That's
1,200.
square feet actually goes down.
Correct.
Sure.
Because whatever it's 25 by 40, but it's not really all
But-
of that that's shaded, it's just.
But
that
they're
little
gonna
section.
come back for that. I mean, they're gonna be back here.
Okay.
And, yeah, they can come back, that's fine.
That's
But-
right. I just wanna see something more than we're just gonna slap up a structure. I actually wanna see what it is.
All right, then let's just table the whole thing. That's what you're gonna say.
No, but
No,
that's,
I don't- I
no,
don't-
let's not do that.
Because,
Okay.
that's why I asked the
If
question
he says they're
earlier,
gonna come back, that may mean in a year.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
2
let's,
years.
yeah, no,
3
yeah,
years.
yeah, let's not cost them 30 more days.
Okay.
what I think.
They're too nice of people to cost them 30 more days.
But what I'm concerned with,
All they wanna do is
Is-
build a house, move in.
the intrusion in the impervious setback on this
Older plan,
the older drawing is 6732.
right? And really, that number's gonna go down because the proposed storage area greenhouse would
Right,
actually be
but does
subtracted.
that make sense, that it's 6732 and the house is 40 feet from the road? But when the house is 60 feet from the road,
Well,
the intrusion is 4890? Something's not right.
what happens is that they're showing a pool.
Bigger footprint in the first plan, that's why. It's closer to the road and it's more intrusive, so it's substantially bigger.
Yeah, so
Is that what you're chomping at the bit to say?
Move 10 foot closer to the road.
Yeah, so that's where
You're getting a swimming pool as well.
right.
it's a bigger structure in the first plan, much bigger.
But even if it is, honestly, so what?
No, because here's the issue, is we end up with about the same impact. And what he
That's
did,
exactly right.
what he did by moving it back is he actually stretched the house out, so he had, the house is longer versus deeper.
Right.
And therefore kept the impact about the same. So what we're saying is, we like the fact that you stretched it out to minimize the impact, now move it up 10 feet, and then minimize the impact even more.
Can't we note both surveys? Can't we note the
Given the
house?
complexity of this case and this plat, I think we're better off to have a drawing as a reference.
Oh, I hate to have them come back in 30 days. I just don't wanna do that to them. I've done too many of these buildings where it just,
I agree. I don't wanna wait 30 minutes.
I don't either.
Okay.
It costs you too much time
Okay,
and money.
well, let me just tell you, here's what you could do, if you're talking like you are.
Yep.
You wanna move it up 10 foot? Someone give me a scale, and we measure that stream buffer incursion area that's crosshatched, and go 10 times whatever that length is. And you reduce the amount of their,
Of the square foot impact?
correct. And that does what you're asking.
I could live with that.
Yeah, but you need to sit here and calculate it.
We have no choice.
Unless you wanna have them
Look at
tabled
scale.
and not come back.
No,
No, I don't want them to come back.
scale.
So scale.
Scale. We're almost there.
Screaming.
Counselor, how's your daughter?
Leaving school now.
I guess you're not gonna pick her up.
Now it's who gets the dog.
Where's your dog?
No.
You may win that one. Okay, you want that one.
Am I doing that?
Right now.
Thank you, sir.
Looks like it's about 2:35.
Can we, Counselor?
Yes.
Can we vote on this meeting to give them 1 minute because they want to say something really bad, or is that against the rules?
You can.
My preference is that there would be a motion to reopen the public hearing.
I think we need
If
to
that-
let both
that's-
sides talk.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
We got a second.
It's the first time in, what, 2 years?
I don't know if we've ever said this
If-
before, but
you-
I think this is.
Would you just wait for Angela before you say anything?
And you do need to vote on it.
Oh,
All
those in
All
favor?
in favor? Opposed? You didn't
opposed?
vote.
I'm-
It's okay.
I'm in favor.
Okay,
you have to wait for Angela, so.
yeah. You
Yeah,
got
I would
60
rather them
seconds.
tell us what they want us to do,
Well,
whether to table it or not. I think it's only,
Right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's rules we have to follow, and it's not, we're not trying to be opposite. Right?
And I'm just mad because they got such a good deal on the land.
Good for you.
I never heard anybody get mad about it. I've never heard anybody get mad over somebody getting a good deal.
They could have inherited it from zero.
That's exactly right.
I'm sorry? It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't. 'Cause
Everybody wants a good deal.
Come on, we're still,
we're still on.
Okay.
All right, please come forward.
We opened it,
Make a suggestion that we hold the second plan because it has the buffer average in it. It helps everybody. If you want to give them flexibility to move 10 feet in the front, just make the maximum intrusion into the buffer along the house on the site plan 15 feet. It solves the problem. Everything comes forward. But it gives them some flexibility in doing it. They only need to come forward 5 feet and still hold the 15 max it to it. You still got your extra 10 feet in there that you're looking for.
That just makes way too much sense.
Yeah, that was way too easy.
So what's the
And just
approach?
make it, but if you go to the first site plan, the buffer average is gone. And that's crazy. But,
Right.
I mean,
That's
it's
first site
just
plan.
crazy. And then you don't worry about all this
I think
percentage
we've
crap
already-
and
we've already
everything
said
else.
no to this.
You know, just
Does that make sense to you?
give them maximum 15 feet into it. I mean, make it real simple.
Right now, Angela, what they're,
I'm sorry.
Did you hear what he
you
said?
might have to say it.
One more time, I'm
All
sorry.
right, if you give the flexibility to come and give them the luxury of going 10 feet forward to the street if they need to, they may not need to, but give them the maximum intrusion of 15 feet into buffer along the site, house located in the site plan. You know, they may only need to go 13 feet or whatever, but, it's real simple. You're going to shift, do the maximum 15 in the buffer. And don't worry about the setback because that doesn't matter much. All we're talking about is the buffer.
because Angela, they were asking for, and I don't have it in front of me, but they were asking for a 25-foot setback or into the buffer. Is that correct?
I haven't calculated by depth, just by, I was just going by square footage.
Let me make sure.
Walter has a scale, so he can check on that.
The issue is that 50-foot stream buffer that is shown as the, I don't know, I think it's the dotted area that is shown back there. It's 50-foot wide. And basically what they show on their plan is that whole area for 50-foot width for that dotted area. If we move the house up or ask them to move up 10 foot, I would think you're taking away 10 foot of that area.
Sure.
And all I'm saying is then, we're saying go by the site plan, but move the house up 10 foot? Or,
Don't, you need luxury of doing that, yeah, but just maximize the intrusion to 15 feet from 50 down, you still got the State Street buffer, 25 feet. But you just do the intrusion into the cities of 15 feet.
No.
That gives 10 feet left over of the city.
but Mr. Evans, the width of that easement is 50 foot. You're showing that whole 50 foot disturbed, and we're moving it up 10 foot.
No, that's.
You can't have 15, so that's why I'm,
It's only the 25 foot of the impervious setback, 25 foot of the cities, and 25 foot of the state. You do allow, the state's 25 foot remains the same.
okay.
And then you allow 15 feet into the 25 foot of the cities, so you're basically 35 feet away from the
Okay.
street.
All right,
And then,
so-
but allow flexibility, if you need to come forward 5 feet, come forward 5 feet. Don't shove it all the way up to 50 feet if they don't want to. They
Okay.
want to get away from the road as much as possible.
So what you're saying is, instead of it being reducing the front yard setback from
60 to 40.
60, make it
50.
The
45.
50. No, make it 50. I mean, they don't want to be up any closer than they need to on that.
Okay.
And then the corresponding maximum intrusion in the city stream buffer is 15 feet.
But only in the shaded areas is depicted on this map.
Only on where the house is.
I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, on the, yeah, plan you'll look at.
Floor is open for a motion.
All right. Let's talk about the second thing, to allow a house and courtyard to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and the 50-foot stream buffer. And it says to allow a pool. Well, that was also confused me. There's not a pool, I
Pool's
guess,
within if you look, it's in the middle.
Within the gray area.
well, I know,
In
I'm
here.
almost wondering why we should even mention that second one is why.
Unless it's required.
I know.
Well, I mean, the house, the pool and the pool deck is impervious, so.
Okay,
So it's gotta be,
That's
it's gotta be
fine.
part of the
That's
motion.
fine.
Okay,
okay,
that's fine.
okay. All right, so I think what I'm hearing,
Get rid of the greenhouse.
okay,
No greenhouse.
and no encroachment.
No addition, I'd like to kind of genericize that, so no additional structures beyond,
Well, that's already good. That's on page 5.
but there's no additional structures, period.
Yeah, keep that in there.
Just leave it right there. Just leave it in.
So you can't, yeah.
Right. So it's just no additional structures.
But see, I can't say that because it's shown on the plan, and I'm gonna have to make reference to the plan because
Okay, so then word it.
I think I have to say,
No additional structures excluding.
Disallow the proposed storage
buffer,
greenhouse.
variance excludes, greenhouse,
That'll work.
pro storage or greenhouse. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mhm.
Angela? Proposed variance excludes storage / greenhouse. Okay, and then the last thing is that
Word for it.
I gotta do one more thing. Maximum encroachment of the city stream buffer of 15 feet.
And I'm thinking, since we're gonna do it that way, do you wanna do a length? Measure the length that he's
I
showing
can,
there?
15
And
foot
that way
by,
it doesn't get,
okay,
spread out.
I scaled it off at 235, but, I mean, I wouldn't say that, you know, if you said 240, I'm not sure you guys are gonna jump up and down.
40, I mean, whatever.
How'd you measure that?
I measured it with a scale,
Oh, you did? Oh, then I'll take that measurement.
so, I mean,
So you want to say 235 or 240?
it's up to you
I
guys.
would say 240 to give them some
Yeah.
leeway in there.
Okay. Maximum encroachment of the city stream buffer of 15 foot by 240 feet. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then we can make reference to this site plan, which talks about buffer averaging and all that. Does that,
Which is
does that
8/9/2013.
help?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Stands
Go.
legally.
So let's read it.
All right.
So then 240 times 15 feet. So we're
Right.
giving them a 3,600 square foot
Correct.
allowance.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
V13-009. This is to allow a reduction of the front yard setback from 60 feet to 50 feet, to allow a house and courtyard to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and 50-foot city stream buffer, to allow a pool to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and the city's 50-foot stream buffer. Also, this buffer variance does exclude the storage and greenhouse, and the maximum encroachment into the city stream buffer is for an area of 15 feet by 240 feet. This is in reference,
Go to page 5.
and then also with staff recommendation of applicant shall install a chain link fence along the 25-foot buffer to prevent encroachment prior to the start of construction. That area is only in the clearing limits of the site, not for the,
The disturbed areas.
right, not in the undisturbed areas, for just the clearing limits
Forget
only.
number 2.
And this is all based on general house, driveway, pool, structure, garage layout as shown on LCE engineering plan, variance plat, 14225 Birmingham Highway, Mr. Adnan Shahiq, dated 8/9/2013.
Can I get a clarification? When you made, you mentioned it's all based on a general reference. Are we making it site plan specific
I'm making
Subject
it,
to
I'm
the
making
10
it generally footprint specific. Maybe that's a better terminology to use. Let me go back to that.
And it was to be moved, however, correct?
Correct. So it's
And
being
I
moved.
wanted, I mean, there's a different, from what I've heard, the discussion was to allow flexibility, but if you require a site plan,
I
we have a
understand.
scaled site plan here. That will be
Okay.
specific.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that the footprint of the plan that is encroaching in the setbacks, in the buffer areas, in the front yard setback are generally the footprints as shown on the site plan for LCE engineers. Does that make sense? Saying it that way?
Is the idea that,
So we can move
as
those
I understand it,
forward.
it sounds like the language being used says they can use only this footprint. They can just move that footprint around so that it meets the 50-foot from the road and 15 feet into the city stream buffer.
Correct.
And, okay.
Does that-
It sounds like what you've said is what everybody is discussing.
Okay. All right, so Chairman, I don't know if you've got that, but.
I do. We need a
That's-
second.
Second?
Second by Mr. Bloor. And any discussion?
Oh, please.
I do have one, was there a specific reference to limiting additional structures?
I did not make that condition as the staff recommended.
I believe the only reference was that
Exclusion.
you excluded the storage.
Come back
They'd
anyway.
have to come, because it would have to be in a variance if they encroach into additional.
They'd have to come back anyway.
They could build it, but they could get slapped pretty hard if they build something that encroaches into.
That's
buffer.
true, you're
Yeah,
right.
they gotta
Yeah,
come back.
they gotta come back. They can't say,
You're right.
they can
Any
find.
any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve V 13009 to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 50 feet, to allow a house and courtyard to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and the 50-foot city stream buffer, to allow a pool to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback and the 50-foot city stream buffer. This buffer variance excludes the greenhouse/storage area. Then we also have a maximum encroachment into the city stream buffer of 15 feet times 240 feet with one condition, and that is that the applicant shall install a chain link fencing along the 25-foot buffer to prevent encroachment prior to the start of construction in all the disturbed areas. And this is platted by the LCE engineers dated 8/9/2003, and it's a footprint plan. And it's
2013.
2013 plat for 14225 Birmingham Highway. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Good luck.
We worked hard on that one.
Yeah, and please get to know your neighbors.
Thanks, guys.
I did get to shake his hand.
Yeah.
Good, good.
He was like, I think you guys are pretty rapid, you're not, don't be all over this.
Well, good luck. We welcome you to the neighborhood, so good luck and look forward to
Yeah,
having you
good
as
luck
a
with the
homeowner.
house.
I'm sorry we got you maybe mad for your greenhouse.
That will be down the road.
You could come back for the
Yeah,
greenhouse.
you can come back. Do you understand that? That, at a different time, different night, because we're not done, ask Angela that question.
Yeah, Angela will help you. Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Now, we have another one here, right?
Yeah.
We get more money.
Here it is.
Do we have one more case?
Yeah, we have
Yes.
another case. Did,
Hang on,
yeah,
'cause I put it away.
010.
V 13-010 to allow a second ground sign. Angela, will you please present?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would love to, but it appears my applicant is not present. So I can present and you can vote, or you can defer it, I guess.
Do we have any idea why she isn't here?
I have no idea. And then I tried her phone number, but it's her office number. So she was at the DRB meeting, so I don't know.
Albie? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Defer it.
That wouldn't be a motion.
What's your motion, sir? Jim?
I don't know, I'm not saying anything.
Can we make a motion without having a public hearing? I guess that.
Here is the
Can't make a
language
motion.
from your bylaws. Should the applicant or agent not be available when the item is called at the end of the agenda, the board may vote to either deny the application or defer the application to a future board meeting, within which time the applicant shall have met all applicable deadlines for the resubmitted material.
And
So we can't,
You can deny or defer,
we cannot approve.
No.
not according to your bylaws.
No, we can only deny or defer.
Deny or defer?
Can I move that
You
we
certainly can.
we defer petition number V13-010 to next month?
Do we have a second?
So Gary lets you to make a motion, he won't let me make a motion.
You just said
Just said-
defer.
You just said defer.
I said motion to defer.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
I
I-
apologize. That was
Next time
actually
I
Jim's
vote on your
motion.
side.
Any discussion? There's been a motion to defer V13-010 to allow a second ground sign to the October 2013 meeting. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. It passed unanimously. All business. New business.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we change our bylaws.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck.
It's a year.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Good job.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side.
Give that to me.
Raise your hand.
Jim and I didn't,